This is the Score to Follow podcast. Welcome to the Score to Follow podcast. I'm your host Dan Laundy this week, and with me are Neil Mundy.
Hello.
And Mark Annals.
Hello.
As always. So, first things first, Neil. I may have thrown a Milky Way at your face before we went on air. Have you recovered?
Slight bleeding, broken nose, very hard fridge confectionery that I believe had come straight out of the fridge. But I don't know what I did wrong, to be honest. I literally came through the door and he threw a Milky Way in my head.
For balance, chocolate oranges are also available from Rawlins.
So, how long will you be out with that injury? 2 weeks?
Yeah, the physio says it's going to be at least a month, I reckon.
Oh, that's going to put off that Barcelona move, isn't it?
Yeah, no, they've gone sniffing around Germany now instead. They're not interested anymore. So it's a mighty shame. Too many people have had chocolate-based injuries.
It's a danger to all, isn't it?
It comes from nowhere.
So after a summer where the football feels like it's never been away, swiftly moving on, the Premier League relaunches this weekend. Did anybody watch Charity Shield?
I did.
Well, I'd expect that actually, being an Arsenal fan.
Yeah,
I did.
Well, in which case then, let's start this little preview with Arsenal. Seems as good a place to start as any.
Mm-hmm. And plus, obviously, Arsenal kind of kick off the season.
On Friday night.
Yes, less than 24 hours away from some Friday night football, folks. Arsenal versus Leicester.
See, I'm going to get on my high horse immediately because I don't agree with the opening day of teams being split across 3 days. I think it should all be on the Saturday on the opening day.
Yeah.
It's a subject for another pod, though.
This is true. We'll do this another time.
We've got a lot of teams to get through.
It's true. Well done for getting me back on track immediately. Right, Mark Annals. So Arsenal have signed Lacazette, looks a dangerous striker, and they brought in Kolasinac, who looked like a beast at the weekend. Is that enough for a title challenge for Arsenal?
I wouldn't say so. I think we do need more. Well, we've signed a striker who proved, season after season in France he can score goals. Whether or not he can bring that to the Premier League, I hope so. If he can, you never know. I mean, we need to, if we can keep hold of Sanchez this season and Ozil as well. You never know. But too often with Arsenal, it's we just fall away. It doesn't really matter who we've got, but the signings we have made, I've been impressed with. Lacazette looked dangerous in the Community Shield. Had one chance hit the post. Apart from that, wasn't really involved that much. But I mean, it kind of shows a good striker if he's not involved too much, and then when he is, he can come up and
hit the post.
Almost score a goal.
If he kicked it in the goal, but
it would have been a lot better if he'd scored. But it was his first game, so we'll let him off. But the other player we signed, Kolasinac, we signed on a free transfer from Schalke. I think there was quite a few teams sort of sniffing around him in the summer. Didn't really know a lot about him, just the fact he seemed to be quite highly rated. But after seeing his coming on a sub in the Community Shield, is very all action, and
he was like an overexcited puppy to me.
Made an impact, didn't he?
Well, on a few Chelsea players, definitely. Yeah, it's built like a tank, and popped up with the goal as well. After obviously Moses had given Chelsea the lead.
I bet he goes in a few fantasy teams this weekend, a few fans.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me. It's interesting that you say, just going back a bit, interesting you say you feel you need to add more, because Wenger seems to think the opposite, doesn't he? I think he's come out and said we actually need to sell players, and Arsenal got a big squad, 31 players, I think. So.
Yeah, we do need to sell players. We've got a lot of deadwood in there. So we do need to get rid of players like
that Oxlade-Chamberlain lad's rubbish. You don't need him.
You're not having him. Well, it's out of my hands, unfortunately. But I hope he doesn't go to you because
early season bants.
I really rate him. But we've got players like Jenkinson, Debussy, been around for a long time, been out on loan. So yeah, that's 2 players for a start. That I think need to get moved on.
Yeah, certainly a lot of fringe players that they don't add anything to Arsenal.
No, it was all about depth. But now we've got better players than them. So
and you would suspect with depends how seriously they take the Europa League, but you would suspect if that's not a priority, which it probably shouldn't be, at least at the start of the season, and unless people refocus, then you there's an argument to say you don't need so many players knocking around.
I'm of an alternative view. I think Arsenal should give that some credence, because I think that top 4 battle this year will be the toughest it's ever been. You could potentially throw some other clubs into the mix, and I think Arsenal need to cover all bases really. Do you think, Neil, that Arsenal are title challengers?
Yeah, I think all of the top 6 are title challengers. And listen, I mean, just very briefly on the Europa thing, I kind of half agree with you and half don't, which is an odd thing to say, but it's kind of.
Are you Owen Hargreaves?
Loving his work all the time. Yeah, it's a tricky one, because you think you're right, 6 into 4 doesn't go, but then also, I mean, where are you? Sort of halfway through the season, that depends on, because if Arsenal are some second and in the middle of a title challenge, there's an argument to say the Europa League is the last thing they need, to be honest, and you could say, well, so it's kind of hard to say now that is a priority, but then the flip side of that argument is come December the 31st and they're in 6th and trailing and everything, then they go, yeah, we'll go absolutely all out for the Europa League. So, but in answer, sorry, that's a very long-winded way of answering your question. Which, yes, I do think they're title challengers, because I think they'll have less games. That notwithstanding, I think they've got some really good quality there. I think Sanchez will probably stay, although it's still hard to call. But
it looks increasingly like he will, doesn't it?
It's looking increasingly like a summer where a lot of big news are threatened and then not that many actually happen. He seems to be one of those players. So, I mean, it's just with Arsenal, it's always how do they approach the big games, because I think they're very good at sort of flat track bullying and beating the smaller teams in the league, often by a couple of goals.
That's our issue. That's been our issue for years.
Yeah, they just especially away. I think they really need. And I know Liverpool play Arsenal at Anfield in a couple of weeks' time, and that's going to be a real big test. If Wenger can come away with that, with at least a draw, and that's already an improvement on last season, and that gives them something to build on for the rest of the campaign.
I don't think they've done enough, and I think the pressure will be on Wenger very quickly if they aren't off to a fast start. So, I mean, that'll be interesting to see. Talking of clubs that seem to be under pressure, let's move on to Chelsea, because Antonio Conte all last season was the most relaxed man I've ever seen in press conferences and stuff, not so much on the sidelines, but he seems to be really spiky. At the moment, it's like something's upset him at Chelsea, and I wonder if everything isn't quite as it seems, and there's sort of going to be a repeat of like a Mourinho-esque situation where there's something gone on. What do you think, Mark?
Well, yeah, it's a bit of a strange one, really, isn't it? I think he's been a bit frustrated in this transfer window. I don't think he's got his his first choices. I think that his first choice striker was Lukaku, and yeah, obviously that's not happened. I've obviously brought Morata in now, which I think will be a good signing, but we'll have to see obviously how he starts off. Still quite a young player.
Good enough as a replacement for Costa? I know they're completely different players.
Yeah, hard to say without having seen him kick a ball in the league. He didn't get much involved on Sunday, but then Chelsea had a man sent off quite soon after he was on, and they were up against it. Hard to say. Does look a completely different type of player. Costa thing probably hasn't helped on Conte. No. It's been rumbling on all summer, and it hasn't really reached a conclusion. I think he'd far rather that the player was already off the books.
Do you think there's a click in the dressing room that might now be against him?
That's always the Chelsea rumour, isn't it?
Well, just because it's what's happened there before, and that the main bulk of those players that were involved in sort of getting Mourinho out are still there.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't take much to sort of leap to think that they could do that again.
Hard to say, but yeah, it wouldn't. I know where you're coming from. Wouldn't perhaps surprise you. I think more telling is looking at Conte's record. He doesn't seem to stick around anywhere for too long. Juventus, he wasn't there for too long. I don't think he was Italy manager for too long either. So it may well be that he'll give it. I mean, the noises he's making don't seem to be that encouraging. May well be that he'll give it the season, and then that'll be that. Which is actually, you know, people always, you know, Chelsea sort of make a habit out of managerial turbulence anyway. So it's almost what they're used to.
No, I don't think they can retain the title, only because statistically it doesn't seem likely. In modern era of the Premier League, it's very rare for a team to win the title and hold on to it that following season.
Yeah, this title's getting ridiculously this decade. No one has retained it, so this title's become ridiculously hard to maintain, and I think it's probably. I think you saw it with Mourinho to an extent. I know there were other factions when Mourinho got sacked from Chelsea, but I think part of it was these lads had just given Mourinho so much, and they just couldn't replicate it that following season. And you've actually even seen that with the likes of when Liverpool finished second and then fell off a cliff. I know with Suarez, but you know you've actually seen teams really push to a Herculean effort one season and then just slightly drop back or fall away the following season. I don't think they'll fall that far like they did before, but I if I was betting on a team to win the league, I wouldn't be putting money on Chelsea personally.
And it'd be interesting to see if Hazard sticks around, if Barca get tired of chasing Coutinho. So if they were to lose him as well, perhaps you'd have to start asking questions, but that's all sort of hearsay for now.
Yeah, it's been very little movement on that front. So, but you're right. I mean, if they do continue to be stonewalled by us, they might. I don't think they will, because he doesn't strike me as a Barcelona type player. I can see him more a Real or a PSG.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But you know, like Barca might be looking around. They've got loads of money burning a hole in the pocket, so it could be an option.
So we might not have the John Travolta tribute act involved at Chelsea for the whole of the season this year.
You're convinced he looks like him, aren't you?
I had to get that in.
No, I think that Chelsea will miss Diego Costa about what he gives them. Just his aggression in the right way when he does it.
You're one of those players that I think if he's in your team.
Yeah. Suarez.
Yeah, you'd want him. And there's a lot of pressure now on Morata to actually obviously be Costa's replacement.
In a way, it's not the ideal situation, is it, for him to come into?
No, it's not. It's not at all. So I think it'd be an interesting one. But yeah, I agree with. I don't think it'd be Chelsea's title next season.
So in which case then the next obvious choice is moving on to Manchester City. They're my favourites, I'll get that out there now. Spent big, really improved the defence, bought another goalkeeper that essentially seems like a replica of the one they've sort of got in and shunted out within a season. Possibly still
goalkeepers a chance for
well, it seems like it's just whack-a-mole with their goalkeepers. So as I say, they spent a lot on the defence. That was their obvious failing last year.
Mm-hmm.
Another year of sort of, if Company stays fit, Company and Otamendi, with now Walker and, is it Mendy at left back they signed from Monaco?
Yeah.
So that with a new keeper to bed in, but going forward, so much attacking threat.
Yeah, they're last season I don't think going forwards that was ever a problem. Yeah, it was their defence. They've obviously got rid of pretty much all they've got rid of all their wing backs because they're all aging. I know Company's getting on as well, but he's I think he's still obviously got it. But yeah, the important thing is keeping him fit because he sort of marshals the defence really. They did look a bit of a shambles last season at times in defence. City, John Stones, obviously a young player coming in, making a lot of mistakes. But yeah, like I said, they've bought well. Wing backs Kyle Walker from Spurs and also signed Dinillo as well from Real Madrid as not a bad backup, and then Mendy left back. So and he's also very quick. So going forward, Walker one side, Mendy the other. They got pace to burn.
Yeah, it's interesting that they haven't decided to go for a centre back. I mean, you mentioned Company and Stones. It doesn't, and they're not linked with any either. You know, there was the odd nibble around Van Dijk, but that seems to have gone very quiet. So he is obviously happy with what he's got, and I almost wonder if he's playing a bit of a high stakes game, similar to Barcelona, where it was like, we'll just be too good going forward, lads. So, it's a bit of a Kevin Keegan philosophy, but we'll beat you 4-2. Because they will beat most teams 4-2 because, well, they won't win every game 4-2, but they'll
probably be quite open.
Score teams.
They'll outscore teams.
I don't see them. Like you said, the fullbacks are very attacking. Although it's a weird position now, fullback, because you can't really win. I think you either get pigeonholed as too defensive or too attacking, and there's nothing in between. So it's kind of hard to be a really good fullback unless you're Dani Alves. Who
incidentally they obviously missed out on at the last minute.
Yeah,
so
he was their first target. So I'd probably put them as favourites as well. Although, like I said before, I do think any of the top six could win the title or finish sixth. It's quite open. But if you had to pick me a favourite side right now with the players that got going forward, I think it's them. One thing I've just thought of, and I could be really way off here, but I wouldn't be surprised to see Sterling have a good season. I think he may be marked as David Silva's kind of replacement, and that's happening over an ongoing process. I think that sort of floating around in the hole behind the attack is his best position.
So it's interesting you say that, because I think Sterling will be one of the next ones to go, not necessarily this summer, and I think Bernardo Silva will be the successor to David Silva.
Well, we'll see.
That's why football's a game of opinion.
Proof of pudding will be in the eating. But that's an equally valid opinion to have, I think, because more accurate than actually what I previously said is it's a make or break season for somebody like him. He either needs to sort of kick on and show, which I think he's got real obvious brilliant talent, or he's going to kind of get behind in the pecking order to the likes of Bernardo Silva, and then he's probably going to be looking to get his game elsewhere.
Well, it's funny you use the term make or break, because obviously this only being Pep's second season, but he's spent a fortune again, and obviously came in with a huge reputation.
Yeah.
So I know he's supposed to be one of the best coaches in the world, and so where would you go from there? But is Pep under real pressure to deliver something this year? Probably the title, but certainly a cup.
I would say so, because I think last season, wasn't it the first trophyless season of his career?
Managerial.
That's what I mean. Managerial. Yeah. He's going to be under the board, and the owners are going to be wanting the title next season, because he's obviously seen what the issue was last season, which was defence, which obviously he's gone in and he's sorted that. By the players he's signed, so only time will tell. If they don't win the league, then I think he'll be under enormous pressure.
I think, just to slightly interject on that, I think the Champions League is huge for them as well. It's always been mooted with that ownership group that is what they want, and I think they've won 2 titles. I'm certainly sure they wouldn't turn down the chance to win more titles if you dangled it in front of them, but they've not won the Champions League, and for somebody to come in, buy that club when they did and turn it round, and but it's a lot of publicity, and what's better publicity than winning the biggest club trophy in club football? So I think that's sort of the number one priority.
And I can see this season being a good opportunity for it, actually, because Real Madrid obviously have won it twice in a row. The likelihood of a third successive hold, probably not likely. Barcelona, I think, have reached their peak and have sort of fallen away, and now obviously having lost Neymar, I'm not quite sure who they'll bring in to replace him. So you've got the 2 Spanish clubs, perhaps not likely. Then Bayern have looked really hit and miss over the course of pre-season, and then in the Super Cup in Germany at the weekend, that they probably should have lost to Dortmund overall and won on penalties in the end. So, I mean, with the exception of maybe PSG, who are building, you'd think that the English clubs have actually got a good throw of the dice at it this year.
Yeah, I think City and United with experienced coaches, you'll probably see them go far. They've got experience of that before.
Well, it'll be interesting to see how City go, because I think they'll play probably the best football in the league. But in terms of managers under pressure, somebody's in disagreement. But I think they will, like you say, they'll just score lots.
Second best.
They'll concede a lot, but they'll score a lot.
Yeah, no, they'll be good to watch. They will.
Be like Spurs circa 1994 with Dumitrescu and
we've got to do that pod one day.
Barnby and Anden.
The 1994-95 season.
Yes, definitely.
It's not something I can look back on fondly. I think our dealers was sacked after about 2 days. But bringing it back to this season, the here and now, and we'll just move on to Spurs.
Seamless link.
Lovely segue.
Seamless link.
So obviously, from my point of view, this season is quite dangerous. I'm not sure about the Wembley thing. It would be easy to hide behind this Wembley curse, but it is a big change to ever not play at your home ground. I think Spurs made White Hart Lane a fortress last year with going unbeaten in the final season there. And now, obviously, today we've had Danny Rose looking to leave not too long after Kyle Walker also leaving. I'm not sure that all is as well as everyone assumed it was at Spurs. It's difficult to know whether Danny Rose is speaking just his mind or whether there's one or two in that dressing room that know that based on their performances they could go elsewhere and earn more. I mean, look, I'm just based. I think Spurs are very similar to Monaco in that respect. I think they've got a lot of players there who have overperformed at a club that isn't necessarily a fashionable top 4 club as such, but all those players have thought, well, we can move on to bigger and better things now on better money. What do you think Spurs can achieve this season? Do you think they're still likely to compete for the title? Is that too much?
Yeah, I think a lot of people have said that Tottenham are going to struggle because they've not signed anyone and they've lost Kyle Walker. But I don't think they'll struggle. I think they'll be up there again. I think they've just, as a squad, they've got a good close-knit squad, and they all work for each other. So yeah, I don't read into it at all that they're going to struggle this season. I think they'll be up challenging. I don't think they will win the league, just because of everyone else strengthening. But I can see them finishing second again.
Wow, I'm surprised by that because with the investment gone on elsewhere, and I know Spurs have got one of the strongest main 11s.
Yeah.
But beyond that, take one or two out, and you're sort of reliant on somebody stepping up. When you consider the bench that a Chelsea or United have got, they can throw on a superstar at half time and change things.
Well, I thought that is that last season. I thought, well, you know, Tottenham have got a good first 11. As soon as they lose to somebody, they're going to struggle. And then they lost Kane. I thought, oh, there you go, it was that. And then obviously, Son came in and scored all those goals, and it was really like he was never away.
See, I thought it was a really close knit dressing room. So, Neil, do you think that the sort of sensationalism of the Danny Rose interview today in the Sun, do you think that exposes perhaps that there is a bit more thought in the dressing room about what else the players could be doing? Or do you think it is a one-man band coming out and trying to get a better contract?
I don't necessarily think that. I think it's. I think when you look at the other manager, you mentioned Monaco, and the other team that Spurs remind me of is Liverpool. And in terms of the managers, I think the managers have quite similar ideas, and certainly perhaps not necessarily footballing philosophies, but the way they want to build a squad and the way they want to go about managing at their respective sides. And I think when you looked at the Spurs, like Mark said, they fought for each other last season. They all seem to have a really good respect and rapport with Pochettino. And I think this Danny Rose thing is actually more somebody, you know, it's easy to read as many things as you want into it or not at all, but I think it's more somebody getting frustrated perhaps with the way of working. I think it's more kind of someone going, but so it's almost like a fan's perspective going, but we haven't signed him, and we haven't signed him, and we haven't signed him. And Pochettino seems fairly calm. Okay, Spurs haven't really done much business, but he seems to know what he's about, and he seems to have his principles in place. But I think perhaps Danny Rose has jumped the gun there. He's seen his mate Kyle Walker leave as well. Obviously, that's not helped. Thought perhaps he can either play for a better contract or get one elsewhere, but I mean, obviously it's difficult to tell if there is a dressing room problem, but if somebody's told me, oh, there's mutiny in the dressing room at a Premier League club, one of the last places I would go to look would be Spurs. Yeah, so they seem a very settled unit, and I also agree with Mark. I think I couldn't say exactly where Spurs will finish, and the Wembley thing is odd because it's not even like the West Ham thing, because West Ham know they've got to get used to playing in that stadium eventually, whereas Spurs will be there for a year and then they're back at White Hart, a new improved White Hart Lane.
I don't think the Wembley thing, I don't think will last anyway. At the Wembley hoodoo, should we say? I think that I think you'll break it quickly.
Well, they got a
start
good
the
win
season.
against Juve again. It's a pre-season
Yeah.
game, but it's a good win against a strong Juve side last weekend. So
that sort of thing tends to also get broken. I mean, if you beat somebody decent early or something.
well,
like
Chelsea's our first game,
Chelsea's your first game.
At
We'll have a
Wembley.
chance to do it with
so
John Travolta going mad on the sidelines.
and Eden Hazard obviously out injured. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I
So,
think
you know, there's every chance, and then people don't really look back after that, and they go, "Oh, that Wembley thing was nonsense," you know.
either way, I think Spurs perhaps need to strengthen if they're going to keep up with the pack and bring a couple in.
Yeah, I mean, like I say, the analogy with Liverpool is good, and I think the same about Liverpool. I think as much as I admire both managers in the terms of their builders, Guardiola, I don't think Guardiola or Mourinho are that type of manager. They just want to bring in the best players for the here and now, whereas I think philosophy is important to Klopp and Pochettino, and Wenger fits into that category as well, I would say. But as much as that's very admirable, occasionally you've got to go, but we really do need to strengthen in this position.
Currently at risk of dropping out the top four, just based on what their direct rivals have been doing.
Well, I think everyone is, aren't they? I know it's a politician's answer, but...
Get off
yeah.
that fence, Neil Mundy. It's hurting your backside.
I genuinely wouldn't be surprised to see any two teams, but... based on the transfer window purely alone, you'd say all three of our teams have a chance of dropping out of the top four because we haven't done that much business in. But is it all about the transfer window? You know, players take time to settle. You pointed out with City, they've got almost a whole new backline that can cause its own problems.
It's true.
Chelsea have done bits and bobs here and there. United have strengthened probably quite sensibly, but still no guarantees.
Well, you mentioned the similarities in philosophy. Let's move on to your club, Liverpool, because again, they've not done a huge amount of business. I think their best bit of business now will be if they can keep hold of Coutinho. They finally seem to have strengthened at left back, where James Milner's done a good job for a couple of years, but they've brought in Andy Robertson from Hull now. Are Liverpool outside bet for a title challenge this year? And again, similarly with all of the others in that bracket, is Klopp under pressure to show some progression now? Or do you think Liverpool and the fan base are quite settled with what he does?
I think the Klopp thing is quite interesting because I think, yes, he probably is under a bit of pressure because I think Liverpool haven't won anything for a while as well, so that there's that need. But there is also the question of what's your move after Jurgen Klopp, and at the moment I don't think Liverpool have one, so I don't think he's under that much pressure.
And I think that's the issue across the board, by the way, in that sort of main group of clubs in the top 4 or 5.
Yeah, true. It's very difficult.
A lot of the big bosses are here already.
Yeah, it's very difficult to look up. For example, I've absolutely no idea what Man United do when Mourinho goes.
Next season, as it?
Yeah, as it probably will be after he wins everything this season. I've absolutely no idea. It's quite difficult. Arsenal's obviously a tricky one. But anyway, moving back onto it. Obviously it'd be good to keep hold of Coutinho, although I'd say Salah looks like a pretty handy signing at the moment. Very quick.
Very impressed with that as a signing.
Yeah. So I'd put him above that right now. But yeah, obviously that's a big thing.
I think I was just going to say, I think with Salah, he's a very good player, and he's sort of giving you, because you had Mane one side give you the pace, and now you've got Salah who can give you pace on the other side. So really, you've got two out and out winners.
Yeah.
And even if you don't play them both, you've got one who can.
Yeah, I think that's part of the plan as well. He'll have them deputising, because we really struggled last season when Mane went to African nations.
Yeah.
And so, he's obviously identified that as a weak link. Similar to yourself, Dan, in that I definitely would have liked us, and we may still buy another couple of players. A centre-back's an absolute must for me. And
Van Dijk?
Well, it's Van Dijk, but I mean, if it increasingly looks likely that Van Dijk is just not an option, if that is the case, and the more time goes on, although I know you put in a transfer request, but that's a bit of a here and there situation. Southampton could still say we're not selling, just like we can say that with Coutinho, should that happen. I personally, although I understand why the manager wants Van Dijk, because he's the perfect player for that system. I think he's got the recovery pace that we need because we play a risky game like City. But I personally would like to see us, if that's just going to become an absolute no-go, then I think we still need to sign somebody of some Although
just for numbers, just for the squad. Or?
Yeah, I just think with Lovren and Matip get injured too easily, too quickly, they don't play enough together. Van Dijk would be the ideal signing. If not, I know the manager doesn't like to compromise on second choices. I understand that, and I think it's probably quite admirable in a way. But this situation, I think, needs somebody else. It needs a
Clavan, not quite.
Clavan is
at the right level
for me. Is a fourth choice defender.
So he's a backup. I think he was bought as, isn't he? So
he's been quite solid, but he's got his definite limitations. And I think they need somebody. But all of the it's the transfer game. All of the way things have looked. There's never been anyone else mentioned in the frame, which means either one of two things: there is no one else, or they're so confident in getting Van Dijk that the deal will go over. They think the deal will go over the line before the window, but we shall see.
I'm sure it will. But Mark, from your perspective, do you think Liverpool perhaps light anywhere? Do you think there's anywhere they should improve? Because from my point of view, they've signed Solanke, who I'd forgotten about till the last minute. But going forward, they still don't have that out and out striker. Bearing in mind, Sturridge got injured again in the. Is it the Audi Cup that you played in? He scored a good goal and
scored a goal and got injured while doing it.
Yeah,
summed up his career sadly. And sort of bittersweet.
I think that I don't necessarily think they need. It's not. I don't think it's a massive deal that they haven't got an out and out striker.
I've also forgotten Firmino.
Yeah, I was just gonna.
Sorry.
No, I've just coming on to Firmino. That so if you keep hold of Coutinho, he's obviously just plays in the sort of number 10 role. You've got let's say Sturridge when he's fit. You've got Firmino who played there a lot last season, and we can see he can score goals.
There's Origi and Ings as well, but
it's obviously you've got those two. So you've got the numbers, but it's just finding that one. But if you're going to get goals from elsewhere, let's say Mane will get you goals. I'm sure Salah will get goals. Coutinho will get you goals. I don't think it's a big issue. I think that defence you do need some more numbers. Centre back.
I think that's widely accepted.
Absolutely.
Kolo Touré is available on a free transfer.
I'd love to bring Kolo back. We could sing the song again.
Yeah. Could have kept Lucas. He could have.
Well, yeah, it's looking that way at the moment, isn't it? He did deputise there.
Yeah, I think that's really the only. I think the only place you need to get somewhere else in, I think, is probably central defence.
Yeah.
Just for numbers.
Wholeheartedly agree. I think the Naby Keita thing was a bit of a red herring. I think he's just a player that Klopp really likes, but I don't think
it's not necessarily needed.
Yeah.
Massively needed because you've got players. You've got Wijnaldum.
Yeah.
You can play there. And
Chan. You count Coutinho as a midfielder. I mean, I know Lallana's out, so we do look a bit of a body lie.
So
perhaps Oxlade-Chamberlain, but I know that wouldn't please you.
No, but
I would still like to see that happen though.
To bring the symmetry back to it, when you sort of mentioned Liverpool in relation to Spurs, would you say then that Liverpool this season are looking to consolidate top four and perhaps get a decent Champions League run, something like that, and that would be acceptable this year?
I think that'd be totally acceptable. Yeah, I think I mean, certainly a pop at some silverware. You hope that'll be in the Champions League. They've still obviously got the qualifier to do, and that's a tough game. But yeah, and certainly a cup run to the top four, I think would be. We should always want to win the league. And
of course.
I think we have a fairly decent shot at it because I still think, like I keep saying, out of the top six. I don't think there's any one outstanding candidate. There are ones that you think are more likely, and City and United probably are those. But I certainly think we should be trying to do that. But yeah, I think that'd be a decent season.
So a club, Mark, that probably are looking for more than that this year is Man United, as Neil just alluded to.
Yep.
Spent 300 million in the 2 years that Mourinho has been there now. Obviously with Pogba last year being the big one. They've signed Lukaku this summer. They've signed Lindelof. And obviously recently signed Matic. They've got quite a good squad there. Mourinho, similarly again with all the others, under big pressure, but the second season tends to be the season where he pulls the irons out of the fire and starts winning things. So should we all be concerned that Man United could run right a bit this season? Or because I saw the Super Cup the other night and not really sure what I felt about that lineup. It didn't really seem very cohesive to me.
I think they need to get back into that bracket of challenging for the Premier League. for obviously the success they've had over the past sort of 10-15 years. They need. It's about time they got back into that mix as a club they are, and I think Mourinho will also want to do that as well. And I think he's the guy to do it. Lukaku, I think, is a very good signing for them here. He would score lots of goals. I mean, there is talk actually they're getting Ibrahimovic back as well. I read the other day that he's been keeping fit at United's training ground.
Man's a machine. I mean, he could go on forever.
Yeah, he could, and apparently he's looked good. Mourinho's been impressed with him. So I saw they're in talks to sign him up for another season. So if they're tossing Lukaku and Ibrahimovic, quite tasty.
I think the club did the right thing in probably shipping out Rooney. His star had started to drop, hadn't it? But
couldn't run anymore. Good
to get out when he did. And we'll move on to Everton shortly. But Neil, do you subscribe to any of this nonsense about Lukaku being a flat track bully, or do you think he'll get the goals United need this season against the big boys?
Well, I think actually he possibly is a bit of a flat track bully, but I think that's actually probably what United need. If you look at last season, they kept drawing at home against the likes of Stoke and Bournemouth, and I think Burnley. Just didn't score enough goals. And I actually think, interesting about Ibrahimovic, but I actually think as good as he was for them, and he really was good for them, he kind of hindered their style of play a bit. When I watched United without Ibrahimovic, I thought that was a much more scary, pacey lineup, attacking wise, than when he was playing. And that's a strange thing to say about somebody who really did make a good impact and scored, I think, about 20 goals in the season. But Lukaku does have that pace, so I expect them to kick on. They've got really good depth, United, when you look at that forward line as well, because you almost forget they've got the likes of Martial and Rashford, and even Lingard can do a job. He's not rubbish by any stretch of the imagination.
It's true. Even their sort of fringe players are players that can come on and make a difference.
Yeah, well, that midfield as well. Juan Mata's probably not getting in the team now.
What a player Juan Mata is.
And you think, well, for a player of that quality, that's almost ridiculous. So they probably actually, in terms of, it's close between them and City, but I'd say they've probably got better depth than City.
Got a really good spine again now.
And he's made sure to strengthen that, hasn't he, this summer in every position apart from goalkeeper. So
and yet still continues with Fellaini. There's something about Fellaini that
Mourinho just likes him, doesn't he?
He's effective though in a strange way. I always say about him that he's the best shit footballer. He's not very good at. It's a bit like what Dirk Kuyt used to do. Although I think Dirk Kuyt was better, but he's not very good at football. But he's just effective at not being very good.
He's effective at just throwing his elbows, really. But no, like I say, he makes a nuisance of himself in the box, doesn't he? He gets in the end of crosses, and
I think he's going to be an option, isn't he?
Oh yeah.
Mourinho's not Tony Pulis, but Mourinho knows there's a time and place to play the percentages and stick the direct ball in the box, and he knows that Fellaini will help him do that.
It'd be interesting to see if the old war of words re-engulfs this season after obviously their battles when they were in charge of the Big Two in Spain. If those two are indeed the two that run for the title this year, then it'll be interesting to see if they start that war up again.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it, with those two, because they are in some terms they are quite similar, and I think they go to a club for 3 years, do their thing, and then leave. But their footballing styles couldn't be further apart, could they?
Yeah.
So it's very interesting. They're sort of, I suppose I'd bracket Conte with them, and then I've previously grouped our 3 club managers together.
You would put Conte out that high? In standing in football?
Sorry, I probably misspoke somewhat in terms of, I wouldn't put him as high as theirs, but I'd put him alongside them in the sense that he goes somewhere for a couple of years, does a job. Right. Sorry, but probably didn't make myself clear, which is a recurring problem. But I think he's that type of manager as those two are. So yeah, they'll obviously perhaps be the war of words if as expected those two do maintain a challenge.
I think a lot could rest on it being a big season for Paul Pogba. Really needs to show what he's made of this season.
Well, second season, I think.
He's had that year to bed back
and people are saying Matic will be sort of carrying his water, which fair enough, and that'll free him to get forward more. I think he's still a very good player, and I've always expected him to kick on, so I wouldn't be surprised if he did this season.
Saw him with Pogba. Saw him like flashes last season, didn't you? But he just didn't do it enough for like a £96 million footballer. Just didn't do enough. But yeah, I think
he looked a bit like he was trying to figure out the league. Like just get his head round it.
Yeah, but I agree with you that them bringing Matic in will only help. Pogba, like I say, can play further forward, and I think that's where he's more effective. He scores goals. So
yeah, absolutely. I think in a Mourinho team, Matic makes perfect sense. I think if Liverpool signed him, I'd be really quite worried. But in a Mourinho team, he makes so much sense.
Probably the sort of player Arsenal could have done with if they could have kept him in London, but that's something for another day as well.
Not necessarily the player. I think we need.
I wouldn't have said
no. I think. I mean, we won't go off on this, but I think if anything, Arsenal need they need a Patrick Vieira type of midfielder.
Well, good luck finding one of those, because we all want one of those.
I know, but that's what they're missing.
Short supply.
Yeah.
So let's move on to the chasing pack. We kind of covered off most of the top 6 there.
Yeah.
The first one that jumps out is Everton. Neil, I'm going to go to you because
our blue neighbours.
You've seen your noisy neighbours start investing the Lukaku money, and I think they've spent it quite wisely in the players that they've brought in so far. Obviously, some are going to have to settle in, but Everton fans, I think, will probably be happy with top 6, maybe run the top 4 close with a cup run. But it's difficult when a club starts investing money because fans get overexcited. Everton, for you, probably no better than that.
Yeah, I think it needs to still be held in relative. I mean, Everton were 7th last year, but although they did okay at times, I felt like they felt like quite a distant 7th, especially when they went away to the big clubs. Now with this investment, I expect that to change a bit, and I'm sure they'll be putting up more of a fight and getting some results, or possibly getting some results away at the big clubs. I still think that the top 6 is probably too strong unless somebody has a nightmare sort of Chelsea 15 type year for Everton to crack into it. So I'd still likely think they will finish 7th, but who knows? Obviously, they could prove me wrong.
They're on the start of that curve, aren't they?
Yeah, and I think for them actually, definitely improvement in the league's important, but I think it's been too long since they won a trophy. They need to go on a cup run, and I think that the squad that he's beginning to assemble will be important for that. I think obviously Michael Keane looks like a promising defender, although you have to say everyone else sort of took a look at him and didn't quite opt for him, so he's kind of got something to prove. And in fact, Pickford's got something to prove as well, even though he's a very young goalkeeper, but he's been talked about so highly by everybody, so now's the time for him to go out and prove exactly what he's worth.
I think that's Sandro Ramirez they bought in on the cheap, 5-6 million from Malaga. I think given the opportunities, I think he could be a poacher this season, someone to watch.
Yeah, everyone's saying that's a massive bargain because he had ridiculously low release clause, but as ever, it's an unknown. You have to wait and see. But
worth a gamble, isn't it?
And Rooney's obviously going to play his heart out for his boyhood club, and he might have a bit of a second summer down there. Sigurdsson as well looks likely to happen. So, and he's a good player. He's probably one of the best attacking options outside of the top 6, certainly from an attacking midfielder type of view. So it's a sensible signing, I think.
So if Everton were to say lose Barkley but bring in Sigurdsson, is Sigurdsson, as I've heard a lot recently, that big a player that firstly he'd be the best player at the club, which is a lot of praise he's been getting in the media, but does that then catapult Everton back into the chance of top 4? Is bringing him on top of what they've got enough to take them up that or challenge that next level?
It's a difficult one. I think if they lost Barkley but they brought in Sigurdsson, I think it would be an upgrade. I think
it'd be best for all parties.
Yeah, I think Barkley is a promising player, but he doesn't do enough week in, week out. Sometimes we have a really good game, other games it'd just be rubbish.
I think he needs a break. I think he needs a fresh challenge. I know that's sort of silly speak sometimes, but I think he genuinely needs to go somewhere different.
I don't think he and Koeman necessarily are ever going to quite fit together.
No, I think that. But regarding breaking into the top 4, I think I think Everton's they've obviously bought well, but I think their issue is going to be how do they replace Lukaku's goals? Obviously, I think Rooney will score goals, but how many we don't know. Ramirez scored a lot of goals in Spain last season. Young player, how we do in the Premier League. They've bought David Klaassen from Ajax, who scored 20 goals I think last season from midfield. But again, coming to a new
league, isn't it?
Yeah,
the Dutch league's always a weird one, isn't it?
Yeah.
For every Van Nistelrooy, you get a Matteo Kesman.
Yeah, exactly. So
Paul Kesman, he always gets referenced, doesn't he?
Sorry, Matteo, if you're listening, which you won't be.
So yeah, I think that's going to be really what is going to be the turning point, is whether they can. What they've got, the team they've got now, will they replicate Lukaku's goals?
I think that's
and more.
Yeah. No, I think that's big, and I think the other thing that we haven't touched on is that they lack a bit of pace. I think don't see any particular pace in that attacking lineup.
You're saying Wayne Rooney's not quick anymore?
Well, I mean, I have seen tortoises run quicker in quicksand.
They've got Lennon still at the club for the time being.
They've got Lennon and Balassi.
Balassi's
obviously injured.
See, that would be like a new player when Balassi comes back.
So there's potential there, but at the moment that would be the one thing I would say is
Kevin Morales.
He's still
It'd be a tough place to go this year either way.
I mean, it always is anyway. The old lady will be rocking, as they say.
Speaking of tough places to go, let's go to West Ham.
Not a tough place.
The London Stadium, which is still better as an athletic stadium this week, has proven that to me. But West Ham and Leicester will kind of combine the two. Are they the ones in that chasing pack with Everton? Leicester.
Sorry.
Are they the ones in that chasing pack that with Everton will be sort of sniffing around the 5th, 6th, 7th? Just looking at the players West Ham have added. So they've brought in Zabaleta, Hernandez, Joe Hart and Arnautovic. So it's quite an impressive summer for them so far, and they've managed to keep hold of Lanzini as well. Leicester, meanwhile, have added Harry Maguire, Iheanacho, who I think is a really good pickup, and Vincent Iborra from Sevilla, who's a really good central midfielder. I'm actually really impressed with Leicester. I know I berated them last season for the way their players down tools.
Fickle, the hand of fate, Daniel.
But no, I have to say, under Shakespeare, they seem to be sort of revitalised, and the players they've brought in, I think could propel them back to that sort of top 7, top 8 again. I really do think that they've got a reasonable side there. They're just maybe 1 or 2 players short. If they sell Mahrez, they could use that money to bring others in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the big thing is whether they can keep hold of Mahrez. It's looking less likely now, but yeah, they've bought well. Iheanacho, great signing for him, because we've seen what we've seen he's got an eye for goal at City. Obviously, he just didn't really get the minutes. But I think I said this on a previous pod that I think he has got, at this moment in time, he's got the best goals to minutes ratio in Premier League history.
Played 4 minutes and scored 3 goals.
Yeah, pretty much. But then we talk about West Ham. West Ham have signed Javier Hernandez.
Also, I think
also a good signing. Yeah. Knows the Premier League. Scored goals in the Premier League. So
it's interesting actually, because the rumour is that West Ham had a straight choice between whether they wanted to follow up interest in Hernandez or whether they wanted to go for Iheanacho.
Yeah.
And they obviously went for Hernandez. What do you think you two would have done in that situation if you're at one of them clubs? Is there a reason to take one over the other?
I probably would have signed Iheanacho, but then I've watched football for God knows how long, but I know shit all about it. So
Neil's on the 2 swears this week.
Yeah, no, I apologise as well, because I said I wasn't going to swear this week, and now I've double sweared. So perhaps it's in reference to that Milky Bar incident earlier.
You're still angry.
Milky Bar, Milky Way. Yeah, I would have signed Iheanacho because I think he's young and promising, whereas Hernandez is a good player, get you goals, but it just feels like there's more of an upward curve trajectory with Iheanacho for me, which will obviously be proven wrong in 3 years when he gets sold to Norwich. No offence, Norwich. But one thing, Leicester, the lad Maguire. I'm
Yeah.
interested to see how he gets on.
They've had to replace either Hoof or...
Well, yeah. They'll actually be playing Easter Island statues at the back after too long. But I'd be interested to see how he gets on, because I thought he looked quite good last season in what was admittedly sometimes quite a poor Hull team.
Yeah, and obviously Leicester do spend the majority of their time defending until
Yeah.
they sort of break forward, so he'll be sort of used to being under the cosh. So he might end up being the perfect signing for Leicester.
Yeah, absolutely.
So this is why I say I think they've had a good window, and I think top 10 is a reasonable expectation this year.
Mm-hmm.
Before we move on, again, we mentioned the West Ham players that they brought in. They've had that year to settle at the stadium. Slaven Bilic is obviously a good coach. I think we all quite like him.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah.
Again, at the West Ham, with that lineup, and then possibly there was talk of Carvalho today, although we don't know if it's just rumour. Is that enough then for them to start looking upwards towards Europa League, or is it going to be mid-table for them?
I still think mid-table. I think they need to improve at the back. They've got.
Haven't they got James Collins?
As I say, James
He's
Collins.
still knocking around.
Yeah.
He's probably like 57. I think it's about 2 seasons ago. I thought James Collins was pretty much the best centre back in the league. He was incredible. But
sometimes I didn't know if he was on the pitch or whether he was a minder that got confused.
Yeah, well they've got Winston Reid who's decent, but yeah, they need to. Really what they should have done is they needed to sign a right back. Really, well they have actually, haven't they? Zabaleta, I've just remembered.
Yeah.
Because obviously last season Antonio was playing there quite a lot. And he's not really a defender. I mean, he's still to come back.
He's a good player for them.
And they've obviously brought in Arnautovic. I think paid a bit over the odds for him, 25 million. But
well, who isn't this summer?
Yeah, I'm going to say.
Well, that is true. But then again, Arnautovic could first game of the season score a hat trick, and then I'll be.
You look a fool.
Yeah.
But I mean,
Arnautovic.
in fairness, I think that West Ham squad, it belies what it does really, because I think with those players added, I'm not trying to go over the top on West Ham here, but I think they should do better than they do. I think there's a lot of talent in that squad. I'd forgotten about Antonio, for example.
Yeah.
And I really do think that West Ham should be challenging Everton next year or this year.
Yeah, you're probably right. I think, I don't know, but I think if you asked West Ham fan, they probably might like to have a quiet season with, I'm putting in cup runs for Everton as well, but maybe another cup run, because last season wasn't much fun for them. Certainly not the first half. Yeah,
Payet this thing as well, all that.
Payet saga. They kept getting beat at home. I think if you said to them, well, you're gonna have a solid home record and you're gonna come 9th. I mean, they wouldn't be jumping for joy, but it would be better than last season for them. So.
Yeah, and I think as we said with the top 6, assumably being quite locked out.
Yeah.
There is a ceiling to which these clubs can probably aspire to. So. I think a top 10 finish and a cup run is a good season.
I think they just need to really try and keep Andy Carroll fit, because I think if you got a run of games, he could.
Many have tried.
It's another guy.
That's the thing.
It's another guy I'd forgotten about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They've had the thing is West Ham had so many problems with injuries up front last season, didn't they? Had Carroll out for a long time, Sacco out for a long time.
Yeah, that's true. I forget how many
they signed
they have.
Ayew, but he
got injured in the second game, didn't he? Of the season, he got a knee injury, so he was out. But I think that they just need to keep some of their forward players fit, and there's every reason why they could get sort of top half. But yeah, like I said, I think they need to improve in defence still.
Yeah, I don't dispute that. Should we sort of move on to the bottom half, see if we can zip through that?
Well, Southampton might be cross at you if you move on to the bottom half without mentioning them.
Well, no,
because I think they're in around about that sort of.
I think they could be in a
well.
spot of trouble actually, which is why I've sort of kept them back.
Okay, I'm sorry. I defer to your better judgment.
Palace on the other hand.
Palace.
No, but okay, so let's sort of start a little bit of a bottom half roundup.
Okay.
We could start with Palace and Southampton.
Mm-hmm.
So Palace, again, is another squad that we mentioned earlier. Palace have got a squad that could do something special.
Yeah.
With maybe a couple of additions. The manager isn't experienced in this league, but he's looking to rebuild a reputation after that bad time of it at Inter Milan. Will that hold them back that he doesn't know the league, or will his reputation kind of drip into the players and then kind of give them a fast start?
I think that. I mean, I don't know enough about De Boer really, but to answer your question properly, but I think so I'm gonna go on a ramble instead. But I think Palace last season had another side who had a strange season and were way below under Pardew what they should have been achieving. There's a good squad of players there, and I think someone like Zaha is probably one of the best players outside of the top 6.
Should we stick with Pod Party Line and just blame Pardew?
Yeah, I think so. I think everything's Pardew's fault, and even the games they lost under Allardyce were Pardew's fault as well. So everything is
kind of
down
sort of
to
flat to deceive last season, didn't they? Palace, like you said, they've got a few players that they've got good players, don't they? They've got Zaha, they've got Benteke.
I forgot about Benteke.
Yeah, I have to say, but they've got players that should be the team should be doing better with the players they got, but it's a bit of a strange one.
I like that. Was he Slovenian guy they bought in last season?
But I can't remember his name.
I can't, which is really informative on the pod. But
yeah, I know.
Google it, listeners.
No, I know I don't know how to pronounce it. It's something like Mahajevic or something, isn't
That's
it?
Something
isn't it? Like that.
Yeah.
But he got decent, didn't he, when he came in? And I think he's had quite a good pre-season for him.
There's something there, evidently, especially with I know like Allardyce is good at getting teams to stay up, but they had some cracking wins last season, beat both Liverpool and Arsenal in the run-in, and quite convincingly as well. So I think there's a fair bit to work with, and I don't know enough about the manager to sort of predict. It's a bit like Southampton as well. Other than he played for us for a brief 6-month spell, I don't know enough about the manager, but. With that squad of players, you would expect them to be fairly mid-table and, a tough proposition to go to.
Just didn't really bring in any experience. They've gone for youth, but big youth in Fosu Mensah and Loftus-Cheek particularly.
Signings, yeah.
There's a lot of strength,
gone for the double barrels. Physical
strength there. So again, on their day, going
they're always a strong outfit anyway.
Going to Selhurst Park again, if they get the crowd up, could be a battle there. Southampton, on the other hand, were dreadful. Towards the back end of last season, couldn't buy a goal. I think there's 5 or 6 games in a row where they just couldn't score, and then they sold Jay Rodriguez.
That's a bit of a strange one, that one, but I'll only see how that comes out. It's obviously good for West Brom, we'll obviously move on to them later, but like you say, they did struggle to score goals at the end of the season, and then obviously one of the main strikers they sold.
So they're relying on Gabbiadini. They bought in Mario Lemina today for I think a club record.
Yeah, he's a midfielder, isn't he?
So again, it's a body across the line. Supposedly Arsenal had a brief interest in him, so he might have something about him. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that's what Southampton needed, because as we say, they just don't score goals. And I can't recall them being linked with anyone particularly to change that situation.
No, like I say, they've got Gabbiadini, who started off well and then got injured last season, and then obviously didn't score after that. They've got Charlie Austin, he's always injured. He can obviously score goals as well, but yeah.
Shane Long, another one who flatters to deceive a bit, but is useful on his day.
He does, yeah. Can be a nuisance. He's got a lot of pace about him, but it's another one that you wouldn't say he would score enough goals and get you sort of
offside too often. Simple, isn't it?
Yeah.
Hasn't learnt the law.
It has been a bit of a quiet summer for them, really, in terms of ins, hasn't it? I think they've actually been bought, haven't they? They've been taken over by a consortium halfway through the summer, or that process may even be ongoing.
It'd just be interesting for me, sorry to jump in, but it'd just be interesting for me. They've got a new coach again. It's another guy that is unknown in the Premier League. They've got away with it 2 or 3 times now. I just wonder how many times that cycle can last before they find themselves in a bit of trouble. Because if they're not scoring goals and the coach doesn't bed in quickly, I'd fear Southampton a little bit, which is why I put them in the bottom half.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're loath to do everything on the back of transfers, aren't you? But it does feel to me like if they do sell Van Dijk, you would expect them to struggle more, obviously depending on how that cash was reinvested. If they don't sell him, again, I've used this phrase a couple of times, but he's probably the best. No, he is the best defender outside of the top 6 in the Premier League for me, and I think he'll probably be able to. He's got enough about him. Again, that's not going to solve the goal scoring problem, although he does chip in with.
Yeah, he does a few, doesn't he?
But they'll probably keep enough clean sheets to be all right. I would expect.
Too many sort of uncertainties at Southampton there for me. I do think there'd be a club to watch over the first half of the season.
So watch them win the Premier League with 110 points.
If that happens, I'll eat my own face.
Shane Long scores 35 goals.
I'm going to swiftly move along by not even talking particularly about Bournemouth or West Brom, because
Bournemouth, just to mention of Bournemouth, Nathan Ake, really good bit of business.
20 million, you think that's okay?
He's a really good player.
Yeah, well, Defoe as well and Begovic.
Yeah,
I think they've bought really well, the ones they've got in.
So they'll probably be bottom by Christmas.
Yeah.
No, it looks like a stabilisation.
Steady, I think.
The fact they've done 2 seasons, gradually upgrading and bought these players in, it looks like it's
got a bit more about them now.
Another good season.
Meanwhile, I suppose West Brom, all we need to say is Tony Pulis, 40 points, safe, drop off in April, and that's them done. I don't know if that's enough for a West Brom fan, but that's what they'll be looking for.
Yeah, I mean, it's every season. You know what you're going to get. But Joe Rodriguez is a good signing in fairness, and perhaps they're going to try and get a few more results on the road and just pick up a bit. But
the Hawthorns is never an easy place to go to.
No, I think Tony Pulis has done very much like what he did at Stoke there, hasn't he? And he's made it a hard place, real cauldron. You get a physical battle, balls in the air a lot. But then it's the next thing to do. And you can do all the 40-point thing and say there'll be an 8th in March and drop off to 13th, and that's fine. But if you're Tony Pulis, perhaps you're saying, well, how do I improve the away form? Home form's great, but away from home we didn't do enough, didn't score enough. How do I get 50 points? So maybe he'll do that. But
it must be difficult to be a fan knowing that you're going to get to a point where you'll have 40, 45 points, which keeps them up. I mean, let's not forget 10 years ago they were a yo-yo club.
That's exactly it, isn't it, I think?
Yeah, they don't score enough goals, and they seem to play just like with the one up front, don't they? Yeah. With Rondon up front, sort of the target man who can score goals, but a lot of the time he's quite isolated.
Yeah, he's doing a lot of hold-up play, isn't he? Poor lad. It's probably the most thankless task in the Premier League, isn't it?
Yeah.
One up front in a Tony Pulis side, just chasing balls with icicles on them.
Jeff Astle needs to make a posthumous appearance.
Bless him.
So let's move on from those two. I think they're pretty comfortable in mid-table. They're probably going to be joined by these two in Stoke and Watford. Stoke I feel like they've gone backwards over the last year or two. They've tried to change their style under Hughes. They brought in some stars, haven't they, with the lad that came in from Bayern. I forget his name now.
Shaqiri. Also got Bojan as well.
Got Bojan, although
he's back there this season. He went out on loan last season, didn't he?
Somebody who hasn't really worked out there other than in sort of intermittent periods. And then you've got
Imbula, who they bought for a lot of money.
Didn't work out.
Looked good to start with.
He looked very good at Porto. And then Al-Nassr, as we touched on, that's a big loss for them. They haven't really replaced him. And I think you guys mentioned shortly before we came on that Swansea are sniffing around getting Joe Allen back. So.
Well, and also I was going to say that kind of a bit of I'd say probably a little bit of an underrated player, because he does pop up goals here and there, but Stoke sold him as well. John Walters.
Oh yeah, he's gone to Burnley.
He's gone to Burnley, so that's
massive Tory. Terrible lad.
Not a fan of.
Not really. He's an Evertonian as well, so he's.
Well, he's got nothing going for him for you, is he?
Yeah, he'll be effective at Burnley though.
Yeah,
he's about all they've got.
He is what he does. He's a big grok up front who scores penalties and knocks people about.
We might talk about him.
Two in a game, wasn't it?
We might have to talk about him when we get to Burnley in a minute.
Yeah.
But just bringing things back to Stoke briefly. They've got Kurt Zouma in, and Darren Fletcher. Which is an interesting one because it goes against the type of player they've been bringing in recently, as we said.
Looks like they're going to get, seems like a deal was close to bring back Martin Zindi as well.
I don't rate him either, personally. I don't think
he did it right, but him and Zuma, centre backs, is a big, strong.
Yeah, I like Zuma actually. I'll be quite interested to see how it gets on. And obviously, he's sort of different from most of the Chelsea loanees in that he's actually got some minutes for Chelsea.
He just had that terrible injury, didn't he? That's just coming back from. So
you wonder if he's one that they actually will want to bring back.
The only thing with Stoke is traditionally the last few years they've got off to really bad starts and not won till like their 6th, 7th, 8th game.
Yeah.
I think if they do that this year, they're in real trouble of going down. I think there's a real risk because I don't think the spirit will be there to rescue them this time round. So I think they're ones to watch in the relegation battles and look out for that. I think Hughes for me is the first one to get the job this year. I think.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely been discontented rumblings around Hughes for some time with some of their fans. I don't think they're seeing any kind of progression, and as you said, they're going backwards more than anything. And it's another one of those things that a cup run helps, but they haven't had that either. So
they're one of those clubs that when the cup does come around, they rest their key players.
Yeah.
And you think, well, what else are you playing for?
Yeah.
But I think that's the pressures of the Premier League, unfortunately.
I think they've lost the Britannia, they sort of made a fortress, really, didn't they? They could beat anyone on their day at Britannia, but now it doesn't seem to be like that.
I think that's when they were playing more the football that Pulis had there. I don't think, like you say, I don't want to use the Arsenal example, but it used to be the sort of place an Arsenal would go and get turned over.
Yeah,
you know,
everyone would get roughed up down
Tuesday night.
Yeah, that classic.
Yeah.
So I think they're in that spot bother this year. Watford. Obviously, at times were awful last year. They've changed the manager again.
Strange team.
The guy they've brought in is the guy that was at Hull for a bit, who nobody had heard of over here this time last year. Were they right to bank on him improving their Premier League aspirations when he took a club down last year, or do you think he'd done enough to earn that move?
I think, like, when you looked at Hull at Christmas, they were pretty much down already, and he actually did well to give them a fighting chance of survival. He did really well at home as well. He had a really strong home record until the end. I think they eventually lost, but
7-1 to Spurs on the final day.
That was
the heart had gone by then.
7-1, 7-0, can't remember.
Went down in style.
Yeah, but I think, but before the last couple of games, he'd been unbeaten at home in all of his clubs. So I think it'd be interesting. I think it's hard because Watford only ever seem to give their managers 1 year, but I think if there is a manager that they're going to give more than 1 year, you'd hope it'd be this guy, because he looks like a promising kind of manager.
Still young as well,
about him. So, but I mean, they brought Andre Gray, and he's quite a decent player, to be honest. Good striker. I think he's got a bit about him. I can't remember what other players they've brought in, but they have brought a few.
I'd be interested to know how many of these players are that manager's choice, though, because we've also got Cleverley, who I think was on loan there last year anyway.
Now permanent.
You've got Will Hughes, who's the youngster at Derby.
Yeah, he's been fated for a move a lot, hasn't he?
Yeah, it's interesting that when he eventually gets it, it's for like the multinational Watford.
I think he was heavily in with Liverpool as a teenager.
He was, for a long time.
Chalobah's finally taken the plunge and left Chelsea for good.
Right.
So he's gone to Watford. And then today or yesterday they signed a young Brazilian called Richarlison. So a lot of talk about him being a really good prospect. But I just wonder, the young English players, particularly with Cleverley, for example, unless that was a pre-agreed on his loan deal last year, if they seem strange signings for him to go in and make.
Possibly, yeah. I mean, I don't know how the structure works, because I'm not sure if they've got a transfer committee or something like that. Because I mean, if you're going to change manager every year, it kind of almost makes sense to have someone else buying the players, and then you always have a coach. So perhaps that's what's going on. It's
good they've actually bought some English players in, though, because before there was a lot of Spanish, Italian, weren't there? Because obviously they've got owners are
the Pozzi family.
Pozzi family.
Italian.
Obviously, so they I think own Udinese, don't they?
Yeah.
And Granada in Spain. So there are a lot of foreign players coming in last season. So I suppose it's good really for Watford to get a few English lads.
Well, I agree. And to be honest, I don't think they can perform much worse than they did at times last year.
No.
At times they really were dire.
I think there'll be an upturn.
And to be honest, to a degree, I think the club deserved it because Sanchez Flores did a good job there, and they probably shouldn't have got shot of him in the first place.
It seems to be the way they work, doesn't it?
Yeah. So speaking of clubs that do unusual business in the transfer market, let's look at Newcastle because they've not done a lot.
No.
I think Benitez has publicly admitted he's unhappy with what the club has actually given him.
Mm-hmm.
Has he currently got enough to stay up? Because Neil, being obviously a Liverpool fan, you know a bit about Benitez. Is this just a Benitez tactic because he knows Ashley's not popular already?
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? I've heard people saying, you sort of wonder if there is a bit of truth in it, that Benitez has to almost be fighting against an owner. You sort of wonder if that's the case here. He almost likes to rub up the wrong way against somebody, but you know what Mike Ashley's going to be like, and you know that he's going to be very tight in charge of the purse strings. So it's. I think he always does want to bring in players because he's almost the opposite of what I said about Klopp earlier, where he won't go for a second choice. Benitez will go through the choices and he'll say, "Yeah, I want this second choice. Can't get him. I'll have the third choice." So he's going to want a couple more.
The only ones we've got listed here really Jacob Murphy, relatively untried in the Premier League from Norwich. Christian Atsu never really got a shot at Chelsea. Another winger.
Went on loan to Everton, didn't get a look in there, and obviously played in the Championship last year for thing. But can he cut it in the Premier League? That's going to be the.
I think there's a French centre half they might have brought in as well. I think he's French, called Lejeune, something like that.
Yeah.
Again, relatively unheralded, I suppose. So I don't really know what to expect from Newcastle. They've got a core nucleus that have played Premier League before. So does that mean they've got enough to stay up under Benitez, experienced coach?
I'm going to say, I reckon they've probably got enough to stay up, but I think they will be struggling bottom half this season. I don't think they've signed some young players, and they're obviously well, I was going to say by far the best team in the Championship last season, but they didn't even win the league, did it? It was Brighton.
They did win it, but
they did pinched it on the last day.
Oh yeah, they did, didn't they? Yeah.
Well, it was one of those. I thought they didn't win it, and then I read something the other day. I was like, oh yeah, they did win it, didn't they?
But they didn't storm it, perhaps like everyone thought they would.
No. Yeah. But they've obviously got. They looked sort of one of the big forces in the Championship, but it's whether those players can now make the step up. I mean, they got obviously Matt Ritchie that strangely left Bournemouth to go down to the Championship. I know he's now come back.
It was a risk.
Yeah, and we know he can perform in the Premier League.
Yeah, he's a good player actually.
Got Dwight Gale as well.
Dwight Gale scored goals. I think he's injured at the moment, though, isn't he? But yeah, I feel he will score goals, but will he score enough?
I think they need to add a couple more before the end of the window. I mean, this is the case for a lot of these clubs. In fact, it's been a very strange window, and that's more of a general.
Probably a lot of late business, and we might have to revisit some of this at a later date.
Yeah. September the 2nd preview.
As things stand, Newcastle probably start, but probably a struggle.
It could be a bit of a it could be a bit dicey.
Home form probably quite important.
You'd think
St James's.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's tick Newcastle off and move on to the likely bottom four in some order. Sorry about this if you're a fan of any of these guys. But initially, then Swansea.
It's huge for them to keep Sigurdsson. I don't think they're going to. He's their best player not by a mile, but he's certainly their best player. Without him,
I think it is by quite some distance, really.
It probably is, actually. Thinking about it, I felt like I was being harsh to their players, but then I'm thinking the next best player I'm thinking is Alfie Mawson, and he's a centre half.
I was saying, Mark, they've kept Alfie Mawson in as well.
Yeah, well, I was also going to say, remember they've got Llorente to come back.
This is true. Yeah, I had forgotten
times.
about Llorente in fairness, but
Tom Carroll,
promising, but
you say promising? I think he must be 23, 24 now.
Yeah.
When do you go from promising to actually having to deliver in football now?
I think he's one of those where he's obviously got he's got some talent, but whether or not he's a Premier League player, that's
I think he'd stand out in the Championship. I think he'd have so many assists, but I think he's in that kind of awkward grouping where he's probably not quite good enough to set the Premier League alight,
but
he's
he'd be
too
really
good for the Championship.
Yeah.
I think the manager's got something about him, though, in fairness. I like the cut of his jib sometimes last season. Yeah. Obviously came to Anfield and won and did well.
Just glad he kept them up.
Yeah, I think he's got something about him, but I don't know if it'll be enough. I don't think they've got enough quality.
I think obviously they've signed Tammy Abraham on loan from Chelsea, who scored a lot of goals in the Championship last season. Good decent for the England under 20s in the summer as well. So the next step for him is will he score goals in the Premier League? I mean, if he can, then him and Llorente
need somebody to create for him though, and I think that's the problem with them potentially losing Sigurdsson.
Yeah,
and they'll have the money to spend.
Yeah,
it's
I'm going to say
replace.
Obviously they could reinvest it really well, but
they've signed some.
It's a bit of an unknown at this point.
Yeah, and then they've signed a few players and a lot of unknowns. They've signed Mesa from a Spanish playmaker, apparently for 11 million.
Yeah.
So,
and again, it's come with a good reputation, but it's stepping into the Premier League, isn't it? And Swansea will be under a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
The only thing I would say is I'm hoping the club have learnt from their mistakes where they went kind of off on these little jaunts last few years with Greedlin and Bob Bradley. You kind of hope they've reverted back to the sort of type.
Yeah, I think they need to give the manager a full season unless something really drastically bad happens, unless they're sat there in January with no points. Which I don't think will happen, by the way, but you know.
No, because there are weaker sides. There are weaker sides in this league, and again, apologies to them, but these are the ones I expect to be in the bottom three, so I've left them till last. So in no particular order, we've got Burnley, Brighton and Huddersfield. Now it's easy to say those will be the three, and like I've said, I wouldn't be surprised if Stoke were involved in that. But let's start with Burnley. Lost two of their key players in Andre Gray, as we've touched on, and Keane as well. Haven't really replaced them. They don't have. I mean, you mentioned Jonathan Walters. He's not Andre Gray.
He's getting on a bit as well.
Yeah. Yeah, he is. And I don't see them being able to maintain that home form that they had last year. I think that started to fall away a little bit, didn't it, around springtime? So if I was Burnley, I think Sean Dyche is a good coach, but I don't know if he's got enough sort of material there now to keep that club afloat.
I think they were lucky last season. I think they were lucky that they were good enough the first half of the season. Obviously, second half they weren't, and they just about stayed up. So yeah, I agree with you that I could see them dropping into the bottom three this season.
Yeah, I mean, you could certainly see it happening. Again, you mentioned the home form. If they can do well at home again, then there's no reason why they can't stay up. They're a difficult team to go to. I mean, they're a sort of a bit of a mini West Brom in many ways. They're not sort of ale house, but they certainly like to, you know, sort of rough it up a bit. So I wouldn't be surprised again if it was a tough place to go to and they managed to finish something like fifth from bottom. Equally, would not be surprised to see them down either, relegated.
It really depends. But like you say, they've lost those two key players and haven't really replaced them. It'd be interesting. You know, they're going to have to do something between now and the end of the window. You would think, because I think at this moment in time they're just losing two of their main players. They're not strong enough. Need
to win on the road as well, which is a problem last year. For a long time.
Well, you'd have to say only just surviving and then your squad being weaker. I think you do have to have alarm bells if you're a Burnley fan. Speaking of alarm bells, I assume that the excitement of being promoted is still probably hanging in the air above Brighton and Huddersfield, but both those clubs in for long hard seasons. I think Huddersfield have signed 10 players over the course of the summer, and Brighton
been very busy.
Brighton have signed 8. Well, I think today might have made it 9 actually.
Yeah, signed a lad from French league, was it, or somebody? I think he's a Spanish player, but I couldn't pronounce the name at all.
They signed
Escudero or something like that.
Yeah. Colombian from I think from Club Bruges or something like that. He was agreed.
I suppose clubs like that, they do have to pick out gems.
It's weird. So it's funny though sometimes, isn't it? Because you can sometimes get those weird sort of half season. It looked like Hull were going to do it last season, and then they didn't. They won the first 2 games and then fell away. But you sometimes get those sort of weird, like Wigan did it once. I think about 10-15 years ago, when they were about 7th going into December, and the Premier League has the capability to do that. I don't think either of these teams would get that high, but you could see them being sort of 12, 13.
Well, Bournemouth in recent times.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Reading a few years back.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it's not...
Ipswich Town, if we want to go back 20 years.
Yeah, well...
Finidi George.
Finished 5th in the UEFA Cup. But, so it's not unheard of. I don't necessarily think either are down. I quite like both clubs, actually. And it'd be nice to see them stay up. You would assume that, you know... They probably are going to be towards the bottom end of the table, simply because they've had to bring in a lot of players. Sometimes that works, sometimes that doesn't. So but I mean, you know, both in different ways, you know, very different types of manager, but you feel both kind of steady, good at holding the club together. So, I mean, yeah.
I mean, I would say at least I know Huddersfield have bought a few players, but they've been relatively cheap buys, I suppose. I think you could argue Brighton have had a go. They've broken their transfer record 3 times this summer. They've signed Matthew Ryan, who's a goalkeeper from Valencia.
Yeah.
I only know him from FIFA, but he was half decent on that.
It's an Aussie, he's Australian.
He is. They signed Davy Proper from, I think, PSV.
Yeah.
Decent signing.
Again, decent player. And then, as we mentioned just now, they bought in this winger from Bruges, so that for I think about 12.5. So they've given it a go, I'd say. You couldn't argue they haven't invested. So they've got an outside chance.
Yeah.
If they hit the ground running and surprise a few like Bournemouth did.
Like you pointed out previously, there are enough teams in the league now with a question mark about them that if these teams start well, they'll be anxious. You know, you said you liked your Stokes, even Southampton, possibly, although I don't think so. But you know, you never know. And then the likes of Burnley and Newcastle as well. So it's not a given that they'll go down. But I mean, you would if I was a betting man, I'd probably put money on it.
You've got a few teams in the Premier League that have just been sort of bobbing along season after season, just not really doing much. And we've obviously got promoted teams, if they're really up for it, you can say them obviously overtaking these teams that have just been bobbing along. So it can go either way, can't it? They could be found. They could be found out straight away, or they can just be go into it and surprise a few teams.
I think that's what they have to aim for. Just briefly, because we haven't touched on any of the Huddersfield players, I suppose their most high-profile signing is Tom Ince.
Yeah,
he's got another opportunity at the Premier League. Probably needs to step up this year to keep them up.
He's done a couple, hasn't he? Obviously, Liverpool, Hull.
He's got the attitude of his old man, hasn't he? Apparently, according to can't remember what I heard, but
let's hope when he retires, he's a better pundit.
Shade thrown at Paul Ince there from Dan Laundy on the Score to Follow podcast. I suppose one question about Brighton, Bournemouth, and Southampton. Are we going to get to one of those places to watch a game this year?
Maybe we could come to you not live from a pub close by.
From a car park outside the Amex Stadium.
That's something that needs to go from football, isn't it?
What's that?
Sponsored stadium. Does my head in. Just call it what it is.
Yeah.
So I think we've gone into reasonable detail with our little preview, the curtain raiser. I know we weren't necessarily going to do this, but I'm going to quickly throw this at you.
Yeah.
Champions, Neil.
I'm going to be boring and say Manchester City.
Well, I'm on board with the City wagon.
Manchester City.
Oh, it's a full house on City.
So they're definitely not going to win the league, are they?
No, because we are definitely going to be wrong. And I might just quickly ask you, favourites of relegation? Actually, no, let's make it more interesting. Let's assume that the ones we've just talked about will struggle. Who are your outside bets for relegation? Because it'd be easy to pick Brighton and Huddersfield.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And without wanting to patronise either of those teams, I hope they both stay up. You've convinced me with your Stoke talk. I'm going to say Stoke.
Wow.
I'm going to say they struggle.
I'm going to say Watford.
Yeah. I think both of those are probably good shouts. I'm going to go Arsenal. No, I'm not. I'm not.
In a
Could happen.
Shocking twist that will surprise absolutely nobody.
Wenger to go by Christmas? No. So obviously I've said Stoke, so I think Stoke are the ones to watch. Well, I've quite enjoyed that.
Yeah, it's been a whistle-stop tour around the Premier League, but we've gone for an hour and 23 minutes.
That's all good, hearty content, though, for people's earboxes.
Yes.
Sure they'll love it.
Specifically ours, because we're going to listen to it, because why wouldn't we listen to our own material?
Yeah, not that we're...
egotistical.
Well, thanks for joining me, gents. I guess we'll be back next week to talk about the first round of Premier League fixtures. We'll probably do some kind of review show. But until then, we've been Score to Follow, and we'll see you next week.
Wow.